lots of ways to network that I find very enjoyable. So I wanted to share that. I've been doing that for the last 10 years, but I think particularly in the current climate with the pandemic, with so many people looking for work, you know, fewer jobs around, lots more people applying for those jobs. I think networking is a really underestimated part of your activities if you're in job search mode. So I particularly wanted to share it in the current climate. So what we'll do, so I've got about, say, 10 tips, a little bit about the format. So I'll do a very quick intro, we'll do a quick poll, and then I'll launch into my top 10 learnings about networking. And as Caroline said, please do, if you've got questions in the moment, do stick them on the chat or put your hand up. I don't particularly want to talk for the next half hour without any interruptions. So love to get your feedback, questions, comments, and then when we finish, we'll do this. We'll carry on and see if there's any questions that you'd like to talk about afterwards. The meeting is finishing at 7, but if anybody does want to stick around for a bit longer, I'm very happy to stay for, you know, another 15 minutes, half an hour, and just have a chat with whoever would like to talk about it a bit more. So just a little bit of background. So as Caroline mentioned, so yeah, I left Radley a very long time ago, went to Oxford, did 3 years in investment banking, did an MBA, and then spent, I think it was about 15 years working in a mixture of retail and manufacturing roles. And then finally, I think aged about 40, found my true calling and when I need to work for myself. So I set up on my own and do a variety of things that I'll touch on in a moment. I've got 3 sons. We enjoyed the what I've called the lockdown bonus. So 2 of them are at university, so we managed to get all 3 sons at home. We had a girlfriend she came for a week and ended up staying for 13. So we, yeah, it was quite an experience this year that we won't forget. And I live in Hampshire. And the point, so the thing about my work, so since I went freelance, I started out mainly doing consulting, so that jigsaw, you can see the activities on the left, so a lot of work in retail because of my past background there, and work in strategy and change. And then what I've started to do more and more of is the activities on the right side, which is more in the one-to-one, so personal development space. So giving talks about networking. I started out doing that for companies, but they're doing it more and more for students, for sixth formers, so that hopefully they will get into good habits, unlike myself, early on in life. And then I've recently done the Henley Business School coaching program, and I've started doing coaching. And the key bit about this, so I love what I do. My office is at home. I've managed to see my kids a lot more. I coach their cricket team, done a whole lot of stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do if I hadn't got good at networking. All my new work comes from networking. And I say that as a reluctant networker. So that's a little bit about me. So let's have a quick do a poll. So I'm going to give you a choice. If you had to describe yourself as a networker, what would you say? Would you say you were a reluctant networker? So you go, yeah, I know I ought to, but really, do I have to? Or are you one of these natural ones who goes, what's all the fuss about? Bring it on. So let's I'm going to call this up now. Keep going. We've got 8 more people to vote according to my screen. 7 more. Can we get 100%? Maybe some people have wandered off to get a cup of tea or a drink. No, oh, 24. Just leave it for another few seconds. Right, okay, as much we're going to get. Right, end polling share results. Okay, so can everybody see that? See the results of the poll? Caroline, Cassie, can you nod if yeah, you can see it. Excellent, good. All right. So I do this every time I do a talk, and this is, so I've written down in my notes, it's usually about 2/3, 1/3. So you're a fairly representative sample. That I think when I started networking, I genuinely thought I was the only person who didn't like networking. And then by the time I published my book, I talked to enough people and thought, yeah, it's probably about 50-50. And the reality is this is fairly typical, that more people than not would, if you gave them a choice, say, actually, I am on the reluctant side. And so I think for us reluctant now, because that's quite encouraging to go, you're not in a minority, there's plenty of us out there. And when I ask people sort of, well, what is it about networking that you don't like? I tend to get sort of two things. So I'm just going to, and so there's two things that I call a sort of networking myths. So one is, it's all about going to events. So these networking events, which now are all online, but they used to be, in big meeting rooms, and you turn up and you'd walk in and there's a huge room full of strangers, and your job was to work the room. And most reluctant networkers I talk to come up with things like, I'd rather watch paint dry than do that. And the reality is that is a way to network, but it's only one way, and there are lots of other ways to do it. And then the second thing that people tell me about why they don't like networking, think they're reluctant, is something about somebody described it as, it's just a politically correct term for using people to get what you want. And so a lot of people feel quite difficult asking for help. So they need a job, and people say, oh, you need to network, go and ask people in your group, in your contacts. People find that quite an awkward thing to do. Yeah, the reality is that isn't networking. That's looking for a job, asking for help. It's selling yourself. The real networking, as I'll come on to, is a two-way activity. So moving this, working. Yeah. So moving into my top 10 learnings, I think at the heart of it, the thing that puts reluctant networkers off networking is this what I call transactional approach to networking. Somebody said to use the word, it feels a bit grubby to do it. And so my view on this is, human beings, we're all naturally collaborative, but we like to deal with people who we know, we like, we trust. And so if you start off the conversation, a lot of the networking events that you go to, they ask you to give your 30-second elevator pitch. The focus is all about what you do. It's all about the transaction. What do you want to, what can I get from you? And that puts a lot of people off. And so I think, my advice here is to, if that approach to networking is dive straight into business, cut to the chase, tell people what you want, which has certainly been prevalent in the last few years. We're all incredibly busy. We haven't got time for all the nice chit chat. Actually, what people want is to start with a relationship. So start with the question, who are you? Tell me a little bit about yourself. And then we can get on and talk about what you do and whether it is that you can help me. And I certainly find it's a much more enjoyable approach to get to know people. It's quite fun on these Zoom networking calls. Now you get to see people in their bedrooms, in their home offices, and you can find out you get to talk about all sorts of interesting things because you've seen their books or their paintings or all sorts of stuff. And it's a way of starting building a relationship. And once you do that, it's then much easier to talk about what do you do and how can I help you and what sort of help would you like from me. So that's learning number one. And then I think that feeds nicely into the number two. So this is great relationships open up your network. So if you've built these relationships with people, the great thing is it isn't, your network isn't just about who you know, it's also about who they know. And so this stats here, so I've got a screenshot from LinkedIn, they don't show this anymore, but they used to do this thing called network statistics. And so back in those days, I had 861 first-degree connections. And what was interesting was there's 214,000 second-degree connections. So that for every first-degree connection, that gives me access to about 250 people. And there are a lot more. Now LinkedIn's even bigger, so that ratio is even bigger than that. And so I'd reckon today I've got about 2,000 connections. That gives me access to about 500,000 people. But if you haven't built the relationship, if it's just this transactional approach, and then somebody says, oh, I see you know so-and-so, could you introduce me? You feel quite uncomfortable doing that. If you've started with a relationship and you get to know people, what I've found it's a pleasure. You want to help them out. You meet them, you get to know them, and then you go, oh, I met someone the other day who's, who you'd be interested in talking to, because you're both in the, you have a lot in common. So it becomes much easier and more pleasurable activity to introduce people if you've built that great relationship. So I think to say point number 2 is think about it isn't just about who you know, it's about who they know. And if you've got the great relationships, that will become much more accessible. Okay, so tip number 3. So reluctant networkers can still be highly effective networkers. So one of the first talks that I did, I got introduced as a converted reluctant networker. And I thought about it a bit and said, well, actually, I'm still a reluctant networker. That's kind of who I am, my personality. But the difference is when I started out networking, whatever it is, 20 years ago, I was what I'd call an ineffective reluctant networker. And what I've learned along the way now is I'm a very effective, but still reluctant networker. And I think, so the key point here is you don't have to have a sort of personality makeover and suddenly become this amazingly extrovert person that loves to work the room. I know a lot of very, very effective networkers who, like me, are quite introvert, not reluctant networkers. They go, oh yeah, that's definitely me. And so it's really about changing your mindset. So as I say, those 2 myths I talked about at the beginning are views that a lot of people have about networking. It's about going to events, it's about using people to get what you want. And so if you have those negative views, it's going to be quite difficult to really embrace networking. So it is about changing your mindset and seeing the value of it. And I think part of the value is it's not just about getting a job or, I'm a consultant now, so maybe I need to find projects. The benefits I've had from networking much wider than that, and sometimes that's I've had really good book recommendations. Recently, I'm at a stage in life where we have aging parents, and it's not easy. One of them's got dementia, and I had a really interesting networking call where we started on relationship, and we ended up talking about aging parents, and they gave me some really good advice on how to deal with that. But that was a really nice sort of unexpected benefit. And then the other little snippet to share is my eldest son graduated this year, graduated in a recession, and not going to be easy to get a job. He's now got a job, and it came out of one of my networking Zooms. So I was just having a catch up with somebody I've known for a few years, happened to mention him, and he said, well, I am looking for a sales and marketing intern. And that's how he got his job, and it was a job that wasn't advertised at all. So for me, at my stage in life, worrying about your kids and wanting them to get a good start in life, another hidden benefit of networking. So, do you have to network? I believe you do, and particularly in the current climate. Okay, so number 4, it's not just for the owners, bosses, and salespeople. So I've had quite a few people who've said to me, yeah, I get it, networking's a good thing, but I don't really need to do it. Isn't that just for, if you own your business, well, of course you need to network, or if you're one of the bosses, you need to do it, or, oh yeah, those sales guys, they need to network. But I've got a job at the moment, I'm not looking for a new job. Why do I need to network? And so I found this was an interesting article. It's from a few years ago now in The Economist. So the network effect. And it just quotes this study that was done in Germany. And the interesting bit here, networking is not just for the elites. So they did this study, and they found that networking can be considered an investment in the future. So the people that they interviewed found that the more time they spent building relationships, both internal networking in their companies, but also outside, led to pay rises and career satisfaction. So I think, back to this point about it isn't just something you turn on and off when you need something. This is something you should be viewing as a lifelong activity of building relationships, getting to know people, helping them out. And it is, if you want to have a successful career, as I said at the beginning in my talk, if I hadn't become a good networker, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today. yeah, which is what I love. I probably would have had to go and take another big corporate job and do something that I didn't particularly want to do. I felt I'd, been there, done that. I was 40 and it was time to do what I really wanted to do. But if I hadn't embraced networking, I wouldn't have worked. So, Karen, okay? No burning questions or comments yet? Okay, excellent. Okay, so learning number 5. It's a two-way thing. Give as much as you take. So this is really trying to bash on the head the notion that you only network when you need something. If that's what you do, I would say you're not networking, you're selling, but you're just calling it networking. And I really like this quote from this chap Zig Ziglar, who I'm sure with a name like that was an American author and salesman. You will get all you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And I think it makes sense. We genuinely, human beings, we're naturally collaborative. We like to help other people out, particularly if they're in need of our help. It's a pleasure to do it. And certainly I've noticed, I don't know if any of you have people putting on LinkedIn at the height of the pandemic, any of my contacts, if you've lost your job or need any help and you think I can help you, please let me know. Anything I can do to help. It feels like in this crisis, everybody's becoming very aware of that. A lot of people are having a tough time and they want to help. And it's wonderful, that collaborative spirit that we have. And so, first thing I would say is, if you can help, well, why not? Just do it. But the natural flip side to that is, if you help someone, they are much more likely to help you back. That's part of building these relationships that it's mutually supportive. It isn't just about you always getting help. And fascinating. So one of the biggest projects that my consulting company won came out of a phone. So I was asked to give somebody some advice. So they were going freelance. So a friend of mine rang me up and said, so and so is going freelance. You've been doing it for a few years. Could you give them a bit of advice? And we had an hour-long phone call, and for probably 58 minutes, I was in give mode. So I was telling him anything and everything, all the advice, everything I'd learned about being freelance, warts and all. And then right at the end, he said, I've got this lead, and it's on a topic that it's not something that I know anything about. Would you be interested? And that, he handed over this lead, and it ended up being an incredibly big project for my business. And I haven't had lots of conversations like that, but it was wonderful that if you look at this quote again, you'll get all you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. I think is a fantastic spirit to adopt generally, and it's absolutely at the heart of networking. Right, so that's number 5. Okay, number 6. So this is one. So I did a talk at my kids' school a couple of years ago, and it was the Economics Society. They wanted me to talk at, and I thought, I did PBE at university, and I thought, I can't remember any economics, but I'll talk about networking. And as if the Economist has written about networking, there must be something economic about it. So I thought I need to come up with an equation. And so my equation is time equals value. And it's something that's just struck me over the years, is the longer you've known somebody, the more value there is in that relationship. And one of the things, a lot of articles written about good networking, and one of the big, the word that keeps coming up is trust. Trust is at the heart of everything. If you trust somebody, you'll help them out. It's absolutely at the heart of all good relationships. But trust takes time to build. And so what I've showed on this slide is to think about, when you meet somebody new, it's like planting a seed. So the little seed on the left, and then you keep nurturing it. So my point in the title, keep investing. So you can't, plant a seed and then leave it for 20 years and hope you come back and you've got a lovely big oak as it is on the right-hand side. You need to keep investing in those relationships. But the good news is, with digital, so with LinkedIn is a great example. It's incredibly easy to keep investing in relationships. So I'll talk in a moment about LinkedIn. But it's unbelievable how, if all you do is some of my contacts, I'll just have once a year, I'll see on LinkedIn that they've got a birthday or a work anniversary, and I'll congratulate them, and we'll have a little digital exchange. That's it. And if you do that for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, suddenly they go, oh yeah, that guy Neil, I've known him for years. Yeah, he's a good guy. And so it builds something that's much stronger than if you just, when you meet somebody new, you're a little bit cautious because you don't know them.
Neil, it's Caroline here. Just got a couple of questions that are quite timely. So one from Dan Pullen at the college. I think that many young people will wonder what they can give, particularly when entering internships in the job market for the first time. Any advice on that, please?
Yeah, no, that's a common concern, and I would even say the same when I was in the middle of my career and networking with senior people. You'd always feel a bit, what have I got to give that they'll know everything. And I was struck. So I was an old boss of mine he was CEO of this company, and I had a chat with him, and he then referred me on to this lead at a project that I could do, and so I thanked him, and I said at the end, is there anything I can do to help you? And he went, well, actually, he said, if you do, give me a call after you've talked to these people, because I think you'll find out some stuff that I might not know that might be interesting. And so I did that. And we had a call afterwards, and he went, oh, that was really interesting. So I think there's a tendency when one's more junior you underestimate what the value of your knowledge and insight. Off the top of my head, I'd say, now in this digital world we're in, people like me, we find it quite hard, this whole, digital stuff. Younger people are digital natives, so it all comes naturally. So actually, there's a lot of talk about we need to get younger people into our companies to help us figure out. And at my old company, B&Q, they even created it was called the Alternative Board or something like that, and they picked some sort of high potential young people, and they get to meet every couple of months, and they talk about topics that the board were wrestling with, so that the board could learn and get some insight. So it's true, you haven't got as much to offer, but you never know, and don't underestimate your knowledge and skill set, and just offer it up. It's a nice thing to do, and if they take it up, that's great. If they don't, it doesn't.
Yes, thank you, Neil. And Roger Vasher has echoed that with saying that the young bring energy and can do. So I think that's a good sign that he appreciates that. Thank you.
So that's it. I carry on.
Yeah, I think Ed's question was very much along the same lines as Dan, so I think you've addressed that. Oh, hang on, we have another one here. In addition to the excellent answer from you, Neil, Mark has said, I was told that we must focus on being interested and not so much on being interesting. It's a soft skill that we can all do no matter what stage of our career we are. So thank you for that, Mark. Yeah,
getting curious is on my coaching course, they talked a lot about being curious. Just be interested, learn, and one of the tips in my book, somebody told me this, was he called it the 5-question rule. So when he goes to events, if he meets somebody new and he asks them 5 questions and they don't ask him anything back in return, he goes, they're only interested in themselves. Maybe they are very interesting, but they're not interested. And that is a sign they're probably not good networkers. It is all about themselves. So yeah, great addition. Thank you. All right, we carry on. Yeah, all right, great. So time equals value, keep investing. Number 7. So this one says so many reasons to keep in touch. And I put this one down because what I learned talking to people is they said, look, I'm getting better at this networking thing. I can go to these events and I can work the room, and I've got my icebreakers and I can chat to somebody and maybe meet them separately. But then I struggle to know what to say in 6 months later or a year later. So unless I've got something specific to say, I don't really know how to keep in touch. It feels a bit awkward. And the good networkers are very, very good at just keeping in touch with people. so that, you know, as and when opportunities, you know, either both for them to help the people in their network, but also to just keep reminding them that, look, I'm out here, this is what I do, so that as and when they, you know, people in their network come across opportunities for them, they think of them. So I've got four different sort of themes of ways that I think it's easy to keep in touch. So one is this: if you think back to number 5, it's a two-way thing. Give as much as you take. This is about giving, so being helpful. So if you come across interesting articles, introduction. So what I often find, I'm talking to somebody, listening, you know, being curious, being interested, and hearing what they've got to say, and going, oh, actually, I met someone the other day who you'd be really interested in talking to because you've got a lot in common. And that's a really nice thing to do. And really adds value to other people, both sides of the both people that you're making the introduction to, assuming it's a relevant one. So they work in the same industry. So being helpful, introductions is one. So let them know what you've been up to, and this is I think a bit of a challenge for us reluctant networkers. So there's the people on Facebook every day posting, this is what, I'm at the pub, or I'm playing football, or my kid's doing this, and they're very happy to do that. I find this one quite difficult because I just don't necessarily love the look at me type approach. But it is important to just keep in touch with people and let them know what you've been up to, so that, as I said, otherwise, when they might come across a great opportunity for you, but if they've, if you haven't let them know that that's what you do, they won't think of you. So, good example, I've just completed this coaching course, so I'm now, getting in touch with people in my network to say, I've completed the course, because you never know if you come across somebody in your network. The coachees I've found so far have all come through people in my network who I've mentioned I'm doing this coaching course, and they said, oh, let me introduce you. So the picture on the right was one. So I travel a fair bit for work, and this was me at a gold mine in Siberia in the Arctic Circle last November. So it was an amazing trip, and I thought, well, that's a good opportunity to just share with my network. So I posted it on LinkedIn and said, just had an amazing week in Siberia, and because it was quite interesting, got lots of likes and comments. As I say, other people are quite happy to do that on a daily, weekly basis, and everybody needs to kind of figure out how comfortable they are at posting, with whatever frequency. But the principle, and there's a guy I know called the LinkedIn man, a chap called James Potter, who just talks about, gives training courses about how to use LinkedIn. And this one for him, he says, is imagine that you're down the pub and your friends just say, Neil, what have you been up to? It's that casual, informal, just, letting people know what you've been doing. Then the third one, so make the most of company collateral. So most of us work for companies, organizations that create sort of what I loosely call collateral. So it might be press releases, case studies, white papers, articles. It could be events, organizing events. I know, some companies, they'll get tickets for sporting events or cultural events, and they'll offer them to their employees to take people in their network. It's a great opportunity for everybody to network, to keep in touch with people. So the picture on the right, this bar has been raised. What's one of the things we do in my business? I talk at conferences, and that's a great excuse to then, get in touch with people. So we published a copy of my talk, and then put that on LinkedIn and sent it out to people. So an example of making the most of company collateral. As I said, it could be as much fun as, I know now there aren't a lot of attendees at sporting events, but back in the day, I occasionally people saying, oh, I got, my company just offered, they got 10 tickets at Twickenham, take anybody want to take people in their network. Great opportunity to have some fun and do some networking. And then the last one, which I think again is a bit enabled by the pandemic, is just call. And I've found, the natural networkers just call anyway, but the reluctant ones often find it a bit difficult. Oh, why should I call them? It's a bit awkward. But what's happened during lockdown, at least for those of us that aren't maxed out in jobs, is we've got a lot of time on our hands. And I've had so much, fun networking on Zoom or Teams or Google Meets, whatever it is, just catching up with people who I haven't spoken to for years. And it's been a, you know, and if you make the effort, if you reach out and go, look, you know, so I'll typically use on, you know, a LinkedIn birthday or something and go, you know, I haven't spoken to you for years, let's have a catch up. And in the past, you know, just, you know, nobody's had time to do a lot of that. And this year it feels like it's been really nice to reconnect with people just with a haven't spoken to you for years, let's have a catch up. So that's so many reasons to keep in touch. And then one of the best ways to keep in touch is our friend LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is your friend. It's become, when I started networking, it was around, but it was still quite new. There were other networking platforms. LinkedIn's become the dominant one, certainly if you're in the UK or America or most countries. There are one or two countries which have their own versions. I go on LinkedIn every day. But I don't go on it for very long. So I'll go on it sort of first thing in the morning when I start work and just have a look. And I usually start with the notifications thing. So that's where, you know, you get told that, as you can see here, so this contact of mine, Sharon Flood, she's got a new position as NED chair of the audit committee. And then I've got some people who've got work anniversaries. And it's, you know, and then you just click on the button and they've already pre-populated the beginning of your message to them. And it's so easy, you know, but the advice I would give is don't just do the automated one. Take half a minute or a minute to personalize it a little bit. If you just get the automated one, I think people find that a bit impersonal. But it's, let's say, this year it's been fantastic. I've had so many, you know, reconnections, Zoom calls, you know, starting to meet people in person again that have come from just congratulating people on birthdays, work anniversaries, promotions. So notifications is great. The other one on the right, so the top skills, you can endorse people. So it's another example of being helpful, being nice to people. And one of my colleagues did that for somebody who used to work for him, and later that day he rang him up and said, "Oh, actually, I need some help with some consulting. Could you help me?" And we won a project that he would not have thought of us if my colleague hadn't endorsed him on LinkedIn. And then the other bit is then you go into your feed and see what other people are commenting and saying, and you can give your comments. And then post yourself. So this online one I posted. So I was doing a talk at Manchester Business School on internet retailing. So I put a post in my feed, and got this comment back from my friend Simon Payne, going, you know, I'm doing this talk, anything you can share. I'm facilitating a conference, and off the back of that, I ended up speaking at his conference and getting a half day of paid work, purely because I posted something on LinkedIn. Otherwise, he wouldn't have thought. So,
Neil, can I interrupt? I've got a question here from Roger. He says he's been on LinkedIn for as long as it has existed. He has a sizable network, but he really doesn't like LinkedIn at all. He's struggling to see the benefit of it. Have you found any interesting e-forums beyond?
I tend to, I mean, I'm a member of a number of networking groups, but they're, you know, they're groups, they're not big e-forums. We now meet on, you know, digitally rather than in person. Yeah, no, I think there may be some, you know, there are some specialist, you know, if I came across one, though, if you worked in the military or if you were in teaching, there are some specialist, you know, LinkedIn equivalents. You know, I don't know, I think LinkedIn's what you want to make of it. And, you know, there is a side, I get a bit fed up with the people who are endlessly posting and promoting themselves and wasting my time, you know, and it has become very shouty, if that's a word. So I get a bit annoyed with it, but it's, you know, I've just found it's a fantastic way for me to keep in touch with what I call the people that I can't, you know, I've got a spreadsheet of my key contacts. But all the others, so the 2,000 contacts I've got, is a great way to keep in touch with them. A great way to, you know, we find out a lot of information, you know, just by, you know, seeing what other people are posting, you can learn a lot. Yeah, and then obviously if you're looking for a job, you know, apart from networking, you know, more one-to-one, LinkedIn is a good place for finding a job. You know,
not for everyone, but
yeah, no, you know, the first principle in my book is find a style that works for you. So there is no one right way to network. I sort of implore everybody to do it, but how you do it, you need to feel comfortable doing. And if LinkedIn doesn't work for you, don't worry. Find other ways. Use a telephone and email and go see people. Go to events. There's lots of other ways to do it. But what I like about LinkedIn is that it can be very efficient way of keeping in touch with a lot of people. And we've won work. There was a project that we got last summer where it was a guy we used to work with him 15 years ago, connected on LinkedIn, and never had any communication with him. We posted stuff, he's never liked it, comment on absolutely nothing. Out of the blue, he gives us a call, gives us a project. And when we said, well, why did you think of us? We haven't spoken to you for 15 years. And he said, oh, I follow your LinkedIn posts. So even though he's not, we didn't know it. There are lots of people just observing, and as I say, it's back to this keeping front of mind, so that when people come across, it doesn't have to be a job, it can be just something, they think of you and give you a call.
Brilliant. Thanks, Neil.
Okay, right, we're nearly done, nearly there. So number 9. So quality over quantity, deepen existing relationships. So this goes to the, this myth about networking is all about going to events. So my lovely picture on the left, is it does put a lot of people off when they think that's what networking is. You turn up, it's full, it's noisy, you don't know anyone, and you just think, oh God, really, do I have to? And my reply to that is, but you don't have to worry about that. What about all the people you already know? So, when did you last talk to them? Have you kept in touch with them? Reach out. Do they know what you're up to, so that if something came up that fitted you, would they think of you? And my view is, I think it's much more valuable to deepen existing relationships, really get to know. You think about my, the little oak tree seed, that, have fewer of those than, it's not like we're celebrities who, have millions of followers on our Instagram accounts. It's about having fewer, deeper relationships. So, say most of my networking is not on the left, it's on the right. It's one-to-one stuff that I used to do in coffee shops. Now I do it on Zoom, and occasionally still get to go back to coffee shops now. But it's one-to-one, getting to know people, reconnecting. And what I've found, is it's more valuable, but also reluctant networkers go, I'll enjoy that. If I then put the poll back up and said, are you a natural networker? A lot more people would say they're natural if they thought networking was, the one-to-one, catching up with somebody, meeting up with somebody, who you were at school with at Radley, and you haven't seen them for 5-10 years, and you go for a beer or a coffee or lunch. People love that. What's not to like about that? That is networking. So, as I say, if you find this, the endless event stuff a bit daunting, just don't worry about it. I go to a few events, but not a lot. I just prefer to do the one-to-one stuff, and I think it's more valuable and more enjoyable. Okay, and then the last one is a new one. So this is a 2020 COVID-19 learning. So online is the new face-to-face. And during lockdown, it wasn't even blend the best of digital and physical. It was just online as the new face-to-face. Now, hopefully, we'll still be allowed to meet people in person. And so I think there's two images here. So one is, I mentioned, so I'm in some networking groups, and we used to meet in person, and this group on the left, what's interesting, so this picture, there are 12 of us in the networking group, and we meet every 2 months in London, and normally we get about 6, 7, 8 people coming, because one of the guys, he's in France, so he very rarely comes, and the other one's in Bristol, and I live in Hampshire, so we don't always get everybody to come. And the great thing with digital, probably a bit like today, we're getting a lot more people can come. So digital makes it very accessible. And so, that's a benefit, but, we all acknowledge, wouldn't it be nice if we could meet in person? So, the good thing is that there are advantages to digital networking, but, there are also plenty of others on physical. And so then on the right is a screenshot from my Zoom calendar. Probably Caroline, Neil catch up. That's probably you and I, Caroline, having a catch up way back, way back then. And you know, again, I'd much prefer to meet people in person and share a coffee than do it on Zoom. But you know, needs must, and during lockdown, we couldn't do that. But what I noticed was two benefits of it. One was suddenly geography and location doesn't limit your networking. So I've had Zoom catch-ups with people who I just haven't seen for years because they live in Birmingham and I'm never in Birmingham, or when we're both in London, we never get a chance to do it. I've had Zoom catch-ups with people in Australia and America that before lockdown doing networking on Zoom or Skype or whatever just felt, I don't know, people didn't really do it. You know, you use video conference for business meetings. And so I think the pandemic has legitimized networking over Zoom or Teams. And it's a great way to then have lots more catch-ups with people wherever they are in the world. And it's much more efficient because you haven't got, you haven't got to travel. You know, that the trouble if you go see somebody, you know, I went and met somebody yesterday and it was a half hour in the car there, and then we had an hour and a half chat, and then I drove back. So that was 2 hours of my day. And it's somebody I know already. I think if we'd done it on Zoom, we probably wouldn't have done an hour and a half, and I would have not had to do the travel. So suddenly that's a 45-minute catch up, not a 2 hours, 2.5 hours of my day. So it's efficient and it allows you to network with loads of people. But, you know, I think the consensus is doing it face to face is more enjoyable and more valuable. So my, you know, the learning here is about blend the best of digital, make the most of all the things that digital allow you to do, keeping in touch with your network all over the world, or all over the country. But also, you know, when you get the chance to meet people in person, embrace that as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Neil. That's incredibly useful. Some great points there.
I think that was my top 10 tips. So very happy to take questions, have a discussion. If you want to, there's a copy of my top 10 tips in a LinkedIn article I posted. So if you check me out on LinkedIn, you can just download a copy of the article if you'd like. Right.
Brilliant. Thank you. I've got some questions on the Q&A chat, so I will start directing those at you. So Tom has said he's someone who designs virtual conferences, and he would love to hear if you have any experience of trying to network in a virtual conference scenario, very much as we're doing now, and what could be done to encourage the reluctant virtual networker, presumably to attend those types of things and interact.
Yeah. No, that is it's definitely not easy, and that's one of the drawbacks of all, you know, it's not just conferences, people saying business meetings, that whole informal chats that you have when you're in the office or at a workshop, it does make it harder. I think there's an element of the organisers trying to create opportunities to get people into smaller groups. I think, yeah, that's worked quite well on some of the ones that I've been on, where you know, when you're staring at this screen with, you know, tens of, you know, hundreds of people, it's, you know, you just listen and you're in listen mode. But when you get put into smaller groups, you know, and I've done ones where, you know, 3, 4, 5 people, you can get to know people a little bit and build in a bit of time to you know, get to, not just the business aspect, but get to know people enough to then encourage them to follow up separately. So I think, as I say, you know, there's a limit to how much you can do, but if you at least encouraging people to have enough of a chat virtually that they then follow up separately, you know, and it's encouraging people to share their, you know, it's like share your contact details so that people can reach out and say, oh, you know, I heard you saying this, you know, I'll be interested in having a chat. So I think people have got to, A, the organisers can do a little bit to make it easy, and then B, the delegates have got to be a bit proactive, and just, you know, but you need to do it outside the conference. It's hard. I was at a online coaching conference a couple of weeks ago, and they put us in breakout groups in the breaks, and it didn't really work. You know, we all went off and got a cup of tea and went to the loo and had lunch. So maybe, you know, but that is one way that you could try to do it, and maybe some people did stick around. So I think that there's a big onus on the conference organisers to make that as easy as possible.
Yeah, I've attended some virtual networking events where we've been put in breakout rooms of 10 with a facilitator who, so you have a speaker such as yourself, and then afterwards you're put into a breakout room for 20 minutes to discuss some questions and share knowledge around that topic, for example, something like events or virtual events. And then you're brought back to the main forum and everybody comes together and they share what they've learned. And I think that worked quite well because there were no more than 10 in the room, and often less than that. And you had someone driving and facilitating the conversation. So that's another thing that I personally felt worked quite well. Ian Campbell has just supported some of the things that you're saying. He said, we must not forget that people buy people, and this applies to job seekers and B2B alike. And that's ultimately achieved through face-to-face. So LinkedIn is a virtual means to that end. COVID has created greater reliance on the virtual, and stand into danger thinking that it's efficient and effective new normal. I think it's basically saying we've got to put up with it, but ultimately face-to-face is the best thing, and that's in support of what you're saying. I've got a good question from Dan here, quite a tactical question. Do you prune your network if it gets too much? This is a bit brutal, Dan. If so, how do you decide who goes and how do you do it?
So no, I don't actively prune my network. I don't, I suppose, what does that mean, pruning your network? So the obvious thing would be to cull connections on LinkedIn. And I've heard sort of mixed views on that. That this guy mentioned, James Potter, his view would be you positively should, and if it's not people that you feel you want to talk to, well enough, there's nothing in common, just cull them. I think the way to do it is you can go into sort of what I call dark mode, so you can hide your activity on LinkedIn. There's somewhere in the settings which allow you to go, so people can't see you. So when you, for example, check their profile out, they won't, it'll go someone in the education industry, blah, blah, blah. So you do it that way, and then I think it's relatively easy to just, unconnect with them. And my guess is if it'll be pretty obvious who, you want to do that, because you don't know them very well, and therefore just, they probably won't even notice. So go ahead and do it. My own view was just a bit more tactical, was you never know, when someone on LinkedIn might see one of my posts, like some of these stories I've told, and it just happens to, you just post something at a time where they get in touch, even though they don't know you very well. So, and it takes time to do it. So to go through my 2000, who should I call? I have got quite a few connections where people who've come to my talks, and they've connected with me, and they've asked a few questions, and then nothing more's come of it. But I'm like, look, I'm posting stuff about networking. I'm quite happy for them to see that. So I don't think it's particularly necessary. The one thing, the one thing is worth saying. So that James Potter did share was, he said, and this is very true. If you come across somebody new on LinkedIn, you will check out what connections you've got in common. And so when you see those common connections, you automatically start making a judgment about that new person based on who their connections that you have in common. So if you've got lots of connections that are perhaps, that are actually not great people, that does start to send a message. So you may want to disconnect for that reason. And then the other one, he says, is for the referral. So you might then get a message from somebody saying, oh, I see you're connected with Neil Munz-Jones, I really fancy an introduction to him. Would you mind introducing me? And then it's a bit embarrassing when you go, well, actually, I don't really know him at all, you know the guy, or that's the thing. So certainly, if you've been in the habit of accepting blind LinkedIn connection requests, so people you've never met before, and I'm sure you all get spammed, lots of people wanting to connect, they don't explain why, and you accept that, you will have a bit of a random connection, and my advice would be, don't accept those connection requests. What I would do, if I get a connection request from somebody who I don't know, I'll look up their profile. If they're trying to flog me something, they're a LinkedIn expert, guarantee me leads, not only do I hit ignore, I click on the I don't know this person to try to tell LinkedIn that they get bad, they get what's the word, black marks on LinkedIn if lots of people go, I don't know this person. But if it's an interesting profile, I'll just send them a note going, look, I don't think we've met. You know, why do you want to chat? Because if I just accept your connection, you know, you just become another statistic in my LinkedIn thing. We'll never talk. Well, you know, let's have a chat first, and then we'll connect. And if people can't be bothered to reply, and a lot of people don't bother to reply, then I don't accept it. But a load of people do, and we end up having a chat. And I've had some really interesting, you know, Zoom chats now with complete strangers, just because they reached out, gave a good reason why they wanted to talk to me. And some of them, it's been quite a nice, you know, nice way to get to know some more people.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you. Question here, what's your view about introducing people to each other who are clearly competitors? Have you ever been in that position, Neil?
Yes, yeah, that's I do. I have exactly that issue, and I think it's fascinating. And so, and I ask the people quite carefully, you know, so I don't just do it. I will ask both parties and say, look, I've met somebody who's kind of in your field, but I think you got a lot in common. And my view on networking is it's better to collaborate. You know, we got more, if we collaborate, we got more, lots of things we can help each other out with. And occasionally we might compete. So I give people a choice. And if they don't want to, that's absolutely fine. But I think if you, it may be a missed opportunity if people are being very narrow-minded in the, oh, you know, we work for the competition. You know, so what? In my old business, when I worked at B&Q, you know, DIY retailers, there's B&Q, there's Homebase and Switch, and if you go in, all my contacts there now, they've all worked at least 2, if not 3 of the retailers. They all know each other really well, and they, you know, they get together and chat, but you know, they'll respect confidentialities. But there's opportunities to help each other out, share, you know, whilst being professional. So I would definitely think it's a good thing to do, but obviously not force it on anybody. Just, you know, ask.
Thank you. When you're fundraising at this time in this sort of virtual world, so you have a new business endeavor, you're an entrepreneur, young, old, whatever stage of your life, how can you do that effectively through the mechanisms that we currently have now, where you have much less opportunity to meet face to face?
Is digital that much different? It's just a different channel, and yes, you don't get a chance to meet somebody in the flesh, but video conference now, you know, say I have been pleasantly surprised at the networking with people I've never met before, doing it on Zoom, and we've built rapport, not as good as meeting face to face. So I think it's, you know, it's become the accepted way to do things. Yeah, you can probably do a lot more of it as well. You know, the great thing with digital is it's quicker and more efficient. So, you know, I'm not an expert. I haven't raised funds for my startup, but I wonder if people are a bit too hung up on the difference between face-to-face and digital. They're just different channels, and they have advantages and disadvantages. And you know, as I said, my last tip, you know, get the best of both. If you can go see someone, great, but if you can't, just, you know, jump on a Zoom call.
Thank you. And another question, how do you work out who the best people are to network with in terms of people who are decision makers, who aren't decision makers? Is that hitting the research side of things, or what do you
no, it's a good question. So on another slide deck, I've got a slide on that. So I sort of have a filter of sort of 4 criteria that I would use. So the first obvious one you mentioned is decision makers. So you know, if somebody is a decision maker, big cheese, yeah, they're probably a good person to try to network with. The challenge is they're very busy, won't have lots of time, but you definitely should have them. If they're in your industry, should be on the list. The second criteria was what I call good networkers. So people like, you know, who are into get networking and want to help others out and connect with other people are you know, tend to be pretty helpful and want to share, make these introductions that we've talked to, maybe to competitors. So I've just lost my train of thought. My screen suddenly changed and everybody's appeared.
Sorry, I was asked to stop your screen sharing so people could kind of see each other a bit better on the screen.
Yeah.
So sorry if
So
that was
just
distracting.
remind me what the question is. I've been talking a lot. So.
Well, it was just how you work out the best
Exactly.
the best person to approach.
So one was good decision makers. Two was good networkers, and then the third and fourth ones tend to be similar people. So one is what I call your business friends. And so those are people that know you and trust you. And the best way to describe a business friend was if a headhunter rang them up and said, I'm thinking of offering Neil a job. What would would you give him a good reference? So your business friends are definitely good people to network because they know you, they trust you, and they'd be very willing to refer you. And the nice thing about that is, there's a lot more. You've probably got a lot more of them than the decision makers, and they've probably got more time to chat to you. So what I learned in the early days of my consulting was I thought, you just network with the decision makers. But as I said, it's quite hard work doing that. They're very busy. They haven't got lots of time to see you. There aren't that many of them. But I started getting projects where I got referred by somebody in the organisation who was at a much lower level, middle manager, but he or she was a business friend. They heard about the opportunity and went, oh, Neil would be really good at that. And they made the introduction. So that's, as I say, business friends are definitely a good one. And then the fourth one is former colleagues or classmates. So this whole old Radleian network, your uni network, wherever you worked before. So all of those people, the ones that know you and trust you tend to be your business friends. So as I say, the gene pool of business friends and former colleagues and classmates, there's a lot of overlap there. So what I've done, so of my 2,000 connections on LinkedIn, I've just sort of, sifted them through, kind of not formally using these 4 criteria, but kind of, intuitively gone, oh no, they definitely tick those boxes, and then I put them into subcategories. So I've got an A list, and the A list tends to be the decision makers, but I've also got a C list, and that's my business friends. So they won't give me work, but it's like having lots of pairs of eyes and ears looking out for you, people who want to help you. So that's, as I say, that's how I go about it. And then, all the rest, if it was somebody who I was, worked with, but they weren't a business friend, I'll be connected with them on LinkedIn, but I won't make much of an effort other than maybe send them a birthday message or a well done, on your 5-year work anniversary.
Brilliant, thank you. Another question here from Nick. What's the best LinkedIn introductory approach message or tips to use when inviting someone who you respect in a certain field to connect when doing so from cold?
Well, first thing I would say is try not to do it cold. Get an introduction. So, the great thing about LinkedIn is it tells you who's connected to all those people that and hence having lots of LinkedIn connections, I think, is probably a good thing, so long as they know you enough to make that referral. So as I say, some people have a much more tight approach to their number of contacts. I think it's good to have lots of people, but at least that I know them enough to do that. So I would always recommend try and get an introduction. A cold call, or cold approach on LinkedIn is much less likely to succeed than somebody making that introduction for you. If you are going to do the cold approach, then tailor it. Take the effort to have checked them out properly. Because I was looking the other day, the LinkedIn man was posting. He just said it's amazing. He gets all these connection requests, and people haven't even checked him out. They're saying stuff that isn't accurate. So make it personal. Make it show that you've researched it. Make it personal to them, and then really explain why. Give them a reason. What is it? Why do you want to talk to them? So I'm amazed at how many connection requests I get from people where I've never met before, and they don't even bother to explain why they want to connect. So and so wants to connect with you. Well, why would anyone accept that? And even if you did, you're not going to do anything. You'll never talk to them. So I say, get a referral, but if otherwise, tailor it, and if you can offer them, some reason why, so it's not just about you asking, that'd be great. But I think just politely ask people for help, and say, particularly in the current climate, a lot of people are very willing to help out. So if you just ask in a polite way, I think you might be pleasantly surprised at the positive response that you get. But don't just send them a cold, without that you haven't even bothered to read their profile, say anything about them.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I've had a few connections like that, and you don't take them very seriously. Message here from Paul. I have a son at Radley and daughters elsewhere. They have their own social networks, but it's just that, social. Any tips on how to persuade them of the need to transition to a more formal network? I try to extol the virtues of LinkedIn, but I'm not sure I'm getting through. How do we get this very interconnected generation to do so, or do you think their networking will take a different form in the future?
Well, so I started doing some talks at sixth formers, and I say three. Try and get this right. So three things to get started, to try not to make it too scary. And the first one is LinkedIn, getting onto LinkedIn, which I think, in a world where they're trying to get jobs, the ones that I know, they do get it, and they go on LinkedIn and they can see the value of it. So but even in the sixth form, I say just get started. Get used to it. See who's connect with classmates, old Radleians. Get you access to some amazing people. So try the LinkedIn approach. The second one was, if you're doing any sort of research project, so if you're doing an EPQ or a dissertation at uni or any form of research, it's a great excuse to get in touch with important people and ask them questions. I'm writing this paper, could I interview you? And you'd be surprised how a lot of people go, oh, yeah, sure, that'd be great, rather than just trying to connect directly with them. And then the third one was just keep in touch with all your classmates. So this social networking, actually, there isn't a totally clear divide between social networking and business networking. It is a bit blurred. And back to my picture with the seeds and the oak trees, those people, if you went to Radley, and you had 5 years together with someone in very formative years, and then you keep in touch with them, and which is a fun thing to do, meet for a beer or a coffee once a year or whatever. You never know where those people are going to go on to. And the fact that you were together in these key years, is incredibly valuable. And so part of it is just keep doing the social networking, and don't lose touch with those, those school friends, uni friends. When you go off your separate ways and into different countries or parts of the country, make the effort. When you're at uni, when you come back home, go to the pub, see your old school friends, and keep in touch with them, because you just never know where they're going to get to. And that's I think most kids would go, yeah, that's all right, I don't mind doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Neil. That was incredibly useful. I think we've done most of the questions. I mean, whatever stage of career you're at, the overarching theme of investing time in relationships is a really, really important one. And that the fact that your network is obviously networking is a lifelong activity that you have to participate in. So I've learned a lot there. So thank you very much. Now we're going to wrap up, but Neil's offered to stick around after the event. So if anybody wants to just stay in this room, they can do that and chat to him and ask him some questions, so you can come off mute. Before you go, I also just want to remind everyone here that we've got our own online networks, the Radley networks, which are Radley Connect and Radley for Life on LinkedIn. And this will help you to network after this meeting. But do go and check them out, particularly Radley Connect, which is really those with a Radley connection, and when they sign up, they say how they're willing to help others. So it's a really useful way of seeing how you can approach someone and not having to worry whether or not they're going to like you approaching them. We'll send links to those by email after this event. But all that remains for me to say is thank you so much to Neil. That was incredibly useful. Thank you all for attending. And our next event will be on the theme of entrepreneurism. So look out for an email on that. So those who wish to leave may now do so. Thank you very much.